My name is Peggy Pappas. I was born and raised in Strasburg. My mother and father were Maynard and Ruth Bartz, lived on Cape and Grade. And I married Mike Pappas in '48, the love of my life. That's all you need to know about. They opened it in 1938. It was really bad. I have pictures in the scrapbook to show you how bad it was. And I don't know how long they worked on it, but I think the first couple of years they just had this dining room area, and they had a bedroom and a bath in the kitchen. They didn't use the two upper floors at all. Now, when they remodeled the upstairs, I'm not sure. I don't know. But they ran it till 1950. And then they bought another restaurant in Berryville, the Mecca restaurant in Berryville. And that's when I took over here. And then my mother-in-law died in 1952. And I had it from there. Actually, I don't know what year I left here. Probably 70. My father-in-law wasn't well. And my husband and I ran the wheel room then, mostly at night, for several years. And we had food and dancing down there. I think it was the Salvation Army. And they had a long table there, and they wanted to know some things about the mill. And they wanted to know what those little boxes were where they were closed. And I said, well, you know, that's where they supposedly shot the enemy, you know. And she said, could I open it? And I said, sure. And she opened it, and I know that thing must have been 6 or 8 feet long. There was a black snake completely filled in that thing, and she screamed and fainted. This old structure was erected in 1804, as may yet be seen on the corner stone. And by the way, you can see it very faintly up on the back corner of this building. And there is a picture in that scrapbook that points an arrow to the stone that has the date on it. My mother-in-law always said it was built in 1791, but then another piece of literature that says it was started in 1791 and finished in 1804, and that's about what it was. It is one of the oldest mills in the state of Virginia, and is one of the very few which withstood Sheridan's raid. It is told by some of the older people of this vicinity that Sheridan did set this mill afire, but later had it extinguished because of the earnest pleas of a certain Mr. Hearn that the women and children were starving to death. On the beams of this room and the room may be read the names of some of the Civil War soldiers who used this building as a fort. The small wooden doors which you see on the wall enclose the holes through which the soldiers shot at the enemy. From the 3rd and 4th story of this building, one may clearly see Signal Knob on the Masnut Mountain. I think it's one of those things that Mom Pappas has written in there, and I did it. I'm the guilty one. On the other side of this beam, for I don't know how many years, there were like letters. And one day I got this cleaning fit, and I got up there with some kind of a cleanser, I can't remember what, and was scrubbing. And Mr. Joe Arch was still living, and he came over here in the front door and he said, don't do that, don't do that. And he screamed. I said, what am I doing? And I was scrubbing the names of the Confederate soldiers off the wall. Some of the letters are still there, I think. But I did that. That was after my mother-in-law died, and I'm so glad because she was really fussed at me. On the Valley Turnpike, 1 mile from Fisher's Hill and 5 miles from Cedar Creek, stands an old stone mill. There, during the Civil War, flour was made for the citizens of Strasburg. On the opposite side of the pike still stands the home of the miller. There lived with the miller his old mother and his sister. This sister had sent 3 brothers and a husband to the cruel war with a smile on her face, saying, "Go and do your duty to the state." In a short time, however, the miller was sent home to make flour for the people of Strasburg, but he was under oath not to make a pound for the Southern soldiers. How they watched the old mill each time the Yankees passed by. Time after time they cut the bolting cloth, and each time the miller's wife and sister mended it and kept it in readiness to make flour. Time after time they threatened to burn it, but each time the miller and his sister succeeded in saving it from the enemy's hands. At one time the miller found huge bundles of pine placed under the eaves of the roof, which was lighted, and he succeeded in saving it. At another time, when the army was pressing, several Yankees entered the yard of the miller, and while he was guarding the old mill, they killed one of his fine hogs. But the little sister waited until an officer approached and politely asked him to order the soldiers to leave the yard, when he whipped up his horse and said, "Every fellow for himself, madam, and the devil for us all." Still the little woman was not daunted and waited patiently until another officer approached. To him she told her trouble, and being a gentleman, he quickly ordered them to march on, not allowing them one slice of meat. When Sheridan came down from the valley burning everything, he camped not far from the old mill. Yankees surrounded the house, and it was declared that should the wagons be fired upon, every house for miles should be burned to the ground. This news terrified the miller and his sister. But while the miller stayed on guard, this timid little woman asked a guard to accompany her and pass down the Yankees' line to General Sheridan's tent. Then she begged him to spare the mill for the people of the town, and he politely assured her that the mill would be saved, and told her that he would give her writings to show that it must not be destroyed. She did not receive the writings, but the mill was again saved. The miller has passed on to his reward, but the sister still lives and has in her possession the testament carried during the 4 years by her husband. When asked how they all bore the anxieties of the war, she smiles and says, "We trusted in God."